All right, so in today's video, I will be covering a pretty late or old video. I'll be covering a episode of the Creator to Creator podcast featuring Neil Druckmann and Alex Garland, specifically the later half of the video in which Neil speaks a bit about the new game, the Intergalactic, the Heretic Prophet, along with some tidbits around The Last of Us Part 2. Now, there will be some light spoilers for The Last of Us Part 2, specifically the earlier portions of the game. I know it's a old game, but I like to give a spoiler warning regardless of a game's age, preferably. That's just me. I will link the episode in the description if you want to watch it in its entirety, and I will be playing the clips all the way through, or at least the specific portions I will be talking about, just so there's a proper context of what was stated and we can all get a full understanding of what was said. So without any further rambling, let's hop right into it.
I've been working on this project at Naughty Dog for 4 years now. We just announced it. It's called Intergalactic, the Heretic Prophet. It's our venture into more sci-fi stuff.
What kind of sci-fi? Like, I mean, obviously I know you, but is it like, you talking deep space? Are you talking about, is it Earthbound?
It's not Earthbound. It takes place 2,000 years in an alternate future that deviates in the late 80s.
Wow.
And we spent like years just coming up with that timeline, and it's dealing with, it's funny, it's like I joke about this with the team. It's like, oh, we made a game with The Last of Us 2, we made certain creative decisions. That got us a lot of hate. A lot of people love it, but a lot of people hate that game.
Who gives a shit?
Exactly. So the joke is like, you know what, let's do something that people won't care as much about. Let's make a game about faith and religion. So there is just, we not only in this alternate history timeline, we've made this where the timeline deviates, this new religion becomes pretty prominent, and then we spend years just building out this religion of like from the original prophet all the way how it gets like changed and sometimes bastardized and evolves over all these years, and then like all these people from this.
How many? You said 2,000 years?
2,000.
Coincidentally, 2,000 years.
Coincidentally, 2,000. And this whole religion takes place on this one planet, and then at one point, all communication stops from this planet.
Nice.
And you're playing a bounty hunter that's chasing her bounty, and she crash lands on this planet. And it's, and I really wanted to make a game about faith and religion, but also about
this. It sounds
just being
awesome.
lonely. So many of the previous games we've done, there's always like an ally with you, and you're talking. I was like, I really want you to be lost in a place that you're really confused about what happened here. Who are the people here? What was their history? And in order to get off this planet, like, again, no one has been heard from this planet for 600 years. So if you ever have hoped to have a chance to get off, you have to figure out what happened here.
So I want to start with the premise that Neil laid out for their upcoming game, which I personally do find interesting. It takes place 2,000 years in the future. It follows our timeline up to the 1980s, in which it diverges, and we have Porsche spaceships. The setting will be on a planet that hasn't had outside communication for centuries, and the story will cover themes such as religion and faith, exploring how religion is shaped and morphed over hundreds of years, and the effect it has on those that practice it. They'll also be tackling loneliness, which is different from their other games, namely The Last of Us, The Last of Us Remastered, The Last of Us Part 2, The Last of Us Part 1, The Last of Us Part 2 Remaster, and The Last of Us Part 2 Director's Cut Edition. Games in which companions and all that fun jazz is important to the story. Yes. The players will control a bounty hunter named Jordan, who ends up stranded on the planet in search of her bounty, with the goal of capturing her bounty and escaping the planet. Now, with a recap out of the way, I kind of want to touch on a little joke Neil made, which was essentially saying, hey, people didn't really like The Last of Us Part 2 because of some of the topics that was covered in that game. So let's cover a less serious topic, which is religion. And if you know how religion is discussed today, that is not a light topic. So I understand the joke. If anyone took it serious, it's a joke if you know how religion is discussed today. And personally, I don't have an issue with them covering this topic. This isn't the first time religion has been talked about in video games, namely with Far Cry 5, for example. And games have covered serious topics before, whether it's racism, genocide, corrupt governments, or no Russian, if anyone gets the reference. The main thing that I'm personally looking forward to, or focusing on rather, is whether or not the story is well told. If they're going to talk about the nature of religion, I hope that it's not, how can I say, I hope it's talked about in both the good way and a bad way for religion and how it affects people. Ideally, I hope it's not targeting any specific religion because of the shit show that will cause if they point out a specific religion and their takes on that. But ideally, ideally is avoid, X religion is bad. I'm not gonna name one anything like that, so people don't take me out of context. But they'll say X religion is bad, and this is what our game is about. Again, it's a general overview. If you create a religion and you focus on the nature and the effects that it has on people, I'm personally fine with that. Then again, personally, if they were to cover a specific one, just me personally, again, it depends on how they approach it, and that's just me personally. I don't want the game to feel as though I'm being preached to, because religion, I'm sorry, I had to put that in there. Now, some people may be against the premise, feeling as though Naughty Dog didn't learn their lesson from The Last of Us Part 2, and I'll touch on my thoughts, or some of my thoughts on The Last of Us Part 2 later on, but I don't think games should avoid certain topics just because they're seen as controversial. Gaming is a diverse medium that allows for a variety of topics or stories to be told, some more serious than others, and I may not connect with the theme of the game, but for me, what matters most is whether the story is well told. And I'd rather evaluate the game on the quality and execution rather than just, hey, it's a personal preference of mine. And I've seen discussions around this, and maybe I'm misinterpreting what people are saying, but it feels as though we don't want religion because it might be a political topic or something like that in the game. And I'm just like, let's see how it plays out first before we kind of shut down approaching topics that people will view as political, and just go from there personally. So overall, I'm looking forward to seeing how they approach this game from a gameplay perspective as well as a narrative perspective. I enjoy most of their games. Again, when it comes to Last of Us Part 2, it was a decent game. I just did not like the narrative. But Naughty Dog is still a developer that I look forward to when it comes to their new projects. So I am looking forward to this game. Again, when it comes to the topic of religion that they'll be covering, again, primarily, I'm focusing on if it's told well, if it's explored well, if you are, how can I put it? I don't know. I don't know the best way to put it. It's going to be a tricky topic in terms of how they handle it because, again, religion is a tough topic for some people. But personally, I'm not against covering tougher issues or tougher topics for people as long as it's executed well and thought-provoking in a sense, I suppose. So now, after Neil explained the mixed reception for The Last of Us 2, explaining how some people loved the game and some people hated it, Alex chimed in saying, "Who gives a shit?" To which Neil agreed with, and that comment stirred some people up, and I understand. And firstly, I want to approach it by saying that I'm approaching this from two perspectives. Firstly, feedback is a vital component when it comes to creating products and learning how to improve on your work moving forward. And I want to emphasize constructive feedback because some of the criticism and feedback that people put or gave against The Last of Us Part 2, I would not say is constructive. And again, constructive feedback is important because it lets you know what did and didn't work for your audience and how to improve your work moving forward. And by being dismissive of the feedback, you come off as pretentious and possibly leading yourself to repeating the same mistakes that cause people to dislike your product and move that on to the next title. Now, with that being said, here's the other way that I look at it. When you put your work online, one of the things, or put yourself out there online, one of the things that people tell you is to grow a thick skin and not worry about what people have to say. If anyone remember the old days of Call of Duty on the 360, and even today, people will say some crazy stuff towards you. I remember I was streaming Resident Evil 8. I never finished that game. Was streaming Resident Evil 8, and a guy just randomly came in saying some racist stuff in my stream, and I kind of laughed it off as whatever. And he later on wished me the best of luck. But point being, people will say some crazy stuff towards you on the internet. So ideally, you want to develop thick skin and just say, I don't care, who gives a shit, essentially, as to what they're saying. And when it comes to The Last of Us Part 2, some of the things that people were saying based off the narrative decisions of the game were kind of bad. People were sending death threats. I believe Laura Bailey, the voice actress for Abby, Swole Abby in The Last of Us Part 2, she had death threats. I believe Neil Druckmann was sent anti-Semitic comments and just a whole lot of other toxic stuff towards the developers of the game because of, again, some narrative decisions that they made in The Last of Us Part 2. Again, a game that I personally didn't like because of the narrative, but still, you know, be respectful as it will be. And when you're the target of that type of harassment, I can't blame either of them for developing that attitude of who gives a shit. Again, specifically their phrasing as the way they put it. Now, I wasn't sure where to fit this in for this video, but I want to talk about some of the reactions and reception for the trailer for the newest game, because I think it's relevant to the point that I'm trying to make. And when the game, or when the trailer dropped, it faced a fair amount of criticism, with one of the main talking points being the character's design, because she has a haircut, a buzz cut, a fresh fade, the type of cut you got in middle school and maybe as an adult today still, where your friends slap you up the side of your head saying that they're trying to do a fade check or something, and maybe I'm just reliving the past right here. So, but of course, some of the backlash that the game faces, no doubt carrying over from The Last of Us Part 2, considering how divisive the game was, and, you know, this is the first new game in forever since The Last of Us Part 2 and all those remasters and remakes. But with this short trailer, people were already making assumptions of what the story is going to be, saying that it's going to be a woke girl boss story, assuming she's going to be a lesbian, insisting she's going to be annoying, and just a variety of other things that they kind of took away from the trailer, even though not much really was said about in the trailer. And honestly, in my opinion, if you had swapped her out with a guy, again, this is in my opinion, I don't think it would have received as much backlash, primarily because, at least for myself, she gave off more of a laid-back attitude similar to, or laid-back rebellious attitude similar to, I would reference to Dante or Star-Lord, and maybe I'm just blind to that. I am wearing some very thick glasses on right now, but when people point to the dislike ratio as proof that Naughty Dog is repeating past mistakes or using it as a metric to go off of to prove a point, I just don't see it when these are the type of complaints that people have for the game, when there's not much being said about the actual game and story. Now, as I said before, when it comes to The Last of Us Part 2 story, I did not really like the story for The Last of Us Part 2. As it was a sharp contrast to The Last of Us Part 1, which is easily one of my top favorite games. And one of the biggest issues that I had for The Last of Us Part 2 was the fact that it felt as a character assassination of Joel and Ellie, the personalities and how they were established in the first game, primarily just to move the plot forward. Personally, that's just how I felt. I know, again, some people love the game, but that's just one of the reasons why I dislike The Last of Us Part 2. As well as some narrative decisions that just did not make any sense. Why was Mel I don't know if she was the only doctor, but she's a doctor. She's also pregnant. Why is she going on the front lines again with a gun, and everyone else, when they're insisting to stay back, and she's like, you know, the whose name I cannot remember, but the dad, he ain't got nothing to do with this. I'll do whatever I want. I don't remember the exact phrasing of that quote, but that was essentially her attitude when people were like, hey, maybe you shouldn't go out on the battlefield. And the ending for the game, I'm not going to say what happened, but I was not a fan of the ending of the game. But with this new game, it is a new IP, it is a new universe, it is new characters, and given how little we know about the game, I cannot say that they're walking towards repeating previous mistakes. Again, one of the issues with the previous game, Last of Us Part 2, is how they just portrayed characters that had a specific personality established in the previous game, and I can't really say that with a new character that we know nothing about. Now, that being said, of course, you can have her be this type of person in Chapter 1, and then in Chapter 2, for whatever reason, she changes how she acts and is a different character entirely. Yes, they are covering a controversial topic, which is religion. Again, I don't see anything inherently wrong with that when it comes to gaming or just being a story to tell. Again, there's a variety of stories that you can tell in gaming. This is just one of them. Yes, the main character, she is shown cutting her hair. Women cut their hair. I can't believe I have to say that, but women cut their hair. And looking back at the trailer, I can see the scars on the back of her head. I believe there's an image in which I can assume is her and her old squad mates in which she had hair. So it makes me ask a question or wonder, does this action have some type of backstory to it? Does it have some plot significance? And less so of Naughty Dog is trying to make a political statement and be different from gaming and so on and so forth. You know, it's just, honestly, it's just gotten to this point where I'm just annoyed and tired of some of the topics surrounding gaming as of late. Not to say it's not without reason, I guess you could say, but it has gotten to this point where, you know, the anti-woke crowd is almost feeling as annoying or being as annoying as the woke crowd was during the Gamergate situation. Back then, you know, if a character was sexy or something like that, appealing to the male gaze, that was problematic. Even more recently, excluding, you know, outside of Gamergate, but more recently, you know, if you were excited for Harry Potter because of, you know, reasons, but don't forget what J.K. Rowling said about this group of people, and if you like the game, you're supporting an evil person and you should be, you know, hounded with death threats and all kinds of other things. But now, if a character isn't the traditional ideal design for a female, it's a problem with the quote-unquote, I hate saying quote-unquote, but quote-unquote anti-woke crowd. It's a problem if, you know, two girls are making out in a game. It's a problem if Yasuke, who is an actual historical figure, is in Assassin's Creed. It's a problem to some people if, you know, the protagonist in Assassin's Creed is female because they would prefer to play as a male character. And it's just like, again, the anti-woke crowd is starting to feel as annoying as the woke crowd. And I have to say again, quote unquote, because it's political jargon. And I know some people saying using the word incorrectly, but I'm just gonna toss it out there regardless. And it's like, I mean, at one point there was a guy whose name I would not name, and he's just extremely annoying, but, you know, trying to rally up people because of one of the character designs. I don't know her name, but it's the hammer lady from Monster Hunter Wilds, and people were like, oh my gosh, she looks this way and she's not you know, long hair and blah 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 blah, she got short hair. It's a problem, guys, rally the troops or some stupid shit like that. But he was like, oh, Gemma and Alma exist, so it's fine. I'm just like, even if you're trolling or grifting, whatever the phrase is better suited, it's just starting to get so annoying seeing these type of discussions in gaming. Again, I'm not being dismissive of genuine criticism if a character truly is poorly written. If a design of a character is actually bad, looking at Concord and some of their designs, which is a lot of people would just say just outright bad. But when it's like complaining because the character has short hair or there's not as much jiggle physics in the game or something like that, it's just starting to get annoying where it feels like people are just complaining about everything if it doesn't fit their preference in a sense. And, you know, again, people say, well, if you don't prefer X game, why are you playing it? But it's just, I don't know the best way to put it. It's like, there's some things where I can agree and understand, not even complaining, but, you know, being critical about. And it's to the point where I feel the things that some people are being critical about is just nonsense and just trying to garner social attention and stir up trouble. Now, I'm not saying the game is going to be phenomenal. The game's not out yet. I could be completely wrong, and the game is a huge political statement, and the character is annoying protagonist. And I was going to use another word, but I'm not going to use that. But in the meantime, with the very limited information that we have right now, it's just like, guys, just chill out when it comes to the game, okay? Just chill out a bit. That's the main thing I'm trying to get. It's a long-winded way of saying that, but that's the main thing I'm trying to get at. And again, when you're faced with that type of backlash, just to kind of rope things back into what I was discussing like 10 minutes ago, is when those are your complaints about a game that you're creating, I don't blame the developer for basically saying who gives a shit towards some of the complaints that they have, because some of the complaints that they have, I'm just gonna be blunt, are kind of stupid. Again, not being dismissive of genuine complaints that people have, but if you're upset that a female character has short hair or she has a buzz cut, whatever you want to call it, that's your complaint. And while everyone does have their preference, I understand that. My biggest issue is mostly how it comes off as being, what's the word I want to look for? Projected to others, explained to others. Again, you don't have to like the romance scene in Assassin's Creed. And it's weird to me that I think some people went out of their way to get a optional, correct me if I'm wrong, but an optional scene to trigger in their game so they can record and post online and then, you know, have other people shit on the game. It's just like, when that's your issue, when you go out of your way to do an optional romance scene, your problem with the game is, oh, the character cut her hair, so now we got to rally against it, or, you know, something of that nature. It starts to feel like, how can I put it? The best way I can say it, this starts to sound like noise to me, in a sense. You know, I'm always one for having, you know, good conversations around different topics and things of that nature. Again, that's why I'm not completely, or not even completely, I'm not against the idea of them talking and covering religion in the game. Again, it's just like, when you're discussing it, at least from my view, if it's going to be a genuine conversation to be had and not people trying to, I don't know, the best word is like stir up trouble, rally the people, whatever you want to call it, over really non-issues and turn them into issues. Again, if you like a character designed to be like Eve from Stellar Blade or Bayonetta from Bayonetta, you know, no problem with that. You know, I don't have any problems with that. Not at all. But again, it's just weird where on the other side of the fence, well, the character isn't, you know, designed like a Bayonetta. She's not designed like Eve. You know, she has short hair. Now it's a problem. Just like, again, just chill out. That's the main thing I'm trying to get at. So, yeah. Now, small rant aside, with all that being said, as a creator and developer, you can't just dismiss all criticism because of a few bad actors. As Neil acknowledged himself, some people love the game and some people hate the game, and it's fine to have a who cares mentality when dealing with bad faith criticism. You know, people that really aren't trying to have like a honest conversation, but that doesn't mean you should lump everyone together as just haters and dismiss them, which Neil, I feel he kind of does later on in the podcast. Now, we're almost done recording this thing. I've been going for so long that I'm in a different outfit. But speaking of valid criticism, one of the last things I want to cover is one of the biggest issues many had with The Last of Us Part 2 was how the marketing essentially misled players. For those unfamiliar, there's a scene in the game where Jesse saves Ellie from a group of enemies, and in the trailer that Naughty Dog had put out, it was actually Joel that saves Ellie from this group of enemies. And seeing as Joel dies on the early half of the game, that scene never actually happens. So myself and many others essentially said that that was basically false advertising.
What the hell are you doing here?
You think I'd let you do this on your own?
What the hell are you doing here?
I think I'd let you do this on your own.
Jesse.
Really, nigga?
Now, Neil does speak on the decision on this, and I'll let the clip play out.
Do think that as like I'm sure you've gathered by now, like a serious fan, I would like to encounter that story knowing as little as possible. And I don't love the process of selling things because I feel one is diminishing it.
I've gotten in trouble actually because if trying to protect the story, we've released a trailer for Last of Us 2 where we faked a shot and we showed Joel somewhere where he would never make it to because of things that happened in that story.
As a deliberate
way to throw off the scent.
Yeah.
And people that didn't like the game accused that of being false advertisement.
Okay, again, who gives a shit?
Now, firstly, I do appreciate that he discussed this because this was one of the big issues I had with The Last of Us Part 2. And again, I'm happy there's a explanation. That said, I'll admit, hearing Neil essentially dismiss the criticism as just people disliked it, followed by Alex saying, again, who gives a shit, it kind of annoyed me. And because I mean, that's exactly what it was. I don't know what else you can call it other than false advertisement. Again, this is one of my biggest gripe with the game, because leading up to it, again, for me, someone who loved the original game, and I see this trailer, you know, the assumption I have is Joel's coming out of retirement. I know he's not retired, but he's coming out of retirement to go the veteran. He's coming out to help Ellie on her quest for vengeance. And when the game launched, and it turned out this would not be the case because, again, he died early on in the game, I was upset. Like, I was genuinely upset because I had this expectation of the game based off of the trailer and the footage and the scenes, etc., that you guys showed off, and I got something entirely different. And again, I understand or appreciate the explanation, because if I get my timeline straight, you know, there was a leak of the game basically spoiling the plot for people. And if they put this trailer out after the leak came out to, as he said, throw out the scent for people, and those things line up, I completely understand why he went about doing it. But I don't agree with it. I really don't agree with the method of doing so. You know, I talked about this with a friend of mine. Hello, friend, if you are watching this. This is a lengthy video, so I won't be surprised today to make it up to this point. But, you know, her perspective was, or essentially posing a question of, could you consider this to be subverting expectations or false advertisement? She kind of compared it to how some scenes change in movie trailers, but the best example I would have for subverting expectations, which again, this is not, is if anyone's familiar with Halo 5 and that marketing campaign. For those, again, unfamiliar, essentially the campaign was showing like, hey, Master Chief done something so bad that now he's being hunted, you know, UNSC has lost faith in him, and things of that nature. We had like Locke versus Master Chief, and mirror shot of Chief about to shoot Locke, to Locke shooting Chief, and so on and so forth. And in the actual game, we did get Master Chief versus Locke. We did get the story of Master Chief essentially being hunted because he went AWOL. So in Halo 5's case, I would say that's more closer to subverting expectations, because we, to an extent, got what we were expecting from the trailer. We just didn't get it to the degree that we were hoping for that the trailers had given us. Like, we did get a fight scene between the two. It was a horrible fight scene between the two. But hey, again, they had the Chief versus Locke marketing push, and that's what we got in the game. And again, Chief was being hunted because he went AWOL. When you had the man who saved the Earth so many times, and at this point, y'all like, oh, come back to. I'm not gonna rant about Halo 5, but that's a good case of subverting expectations. The Last of Us Part 2 does not meet that level, in my opinion, because again, with this trailer showing Joel alive at this point, there's so many different expectations to be had now moving forward because of this. Because again, now you're thinking, okay, Joel's going to be helping Ellie. What does this look like? What, you know, what's the reason Ellie is on this quest for vengeance? How is Joel going to play a role in helping her with her quest? And when you get the final game, you find, I mean, he is vital to her quest because she's trying to avenge him. But again, it's an entirely different story at that point. We replace the characters because of what happens in the story. So yes, again, I consider this to be false advertisement, not because I'm just a hater or something like that. Like, no, it is false advertisement. I really don't know what else you can call it other than it was false advertisement. All right, with all that being said, we have finally made it to the end of the video. And if you made it this far, you're a trooper. Otherwise, if you use the time stamps below, I don't blame you. I understand, but I just wanted to recap on what I discussed. I do appreciate the information that we got in regards to their upcoming game, the Intergalactic Heretic Prophet, and I do wish people would kind of chill out when it comes to discussing the game. Again, you don't have to be looking for it. You don't have to love the game. You know, a game isn't for everyone. Some games aren't for everyone. That's fine. But when people are calling like woke garbage and stuff like that, that's where I think people are going a little bit overboard. Yes, she has her haircut. I understand that. But again, when you look at the scars on her head, when you look at the image of her and assuming to be her squad mates, you know, there's questions to be had of what significance that could possibly have to the plot. It's not new to stories where a character will cut their hair, either partially, completely, or whatever have you, to signify something when it comes to a narrative change or some significance to the story plot. And that's kind of what I'm looking at with this upcoming game as well, and less so whether or not it's like Naughty Dog trying to make a political statement or something like that. Now, if she says something like down with straight white men, or this is a woman's job or something like that, then like, yeah, I would be there with you because I'm tired of that rhetoric as well. But that's not what we got in the trailer. Rewatching it myself multiple times, nothing like that in the trailer. Just her cutting her hair, and the amount of thumbnails and comments I've seen of people upset about that is kind of baffling, I will be honest. And in regards to his who gives a shit comments, again, I agree with other people in terms of you can't be dismissive of all criticism and feedback just because of a few bad actors. There are people who had genuine problems with The Last of Us Part 2, and just to sum up their complaints as, oh, they're just haters, who gives a shit, and things of that nature, it's like, that's not good as a developer and a creator trying to sell a product to people. But at the same time, again, I can't understand where, if you're taking the toxic ones and kind of developing a thick skin, if you will, sure, I understand to say who gives a shit, don't let that get to you. But again, as a developer in the business of selling games, don't lump everyone together. Take feedback where it's actually being critical and people are actually giving honest feedback, and grow and learn from that, and not just sweep it under the rug and things of that nature. And again, when it comes to the false advertisement bit, it's false advertisement. Don't try to dress it up as it's not. Don't say, oh, those that disliked it would say it's false advertising. It was. At this point, blank and simple, it was. So with all that being said, like I said, this was a lengthy video. I wanted to talk about the intergalactic stuff a little bit lengthy because I didn't make a video when the trailer was first shown. I had some thoughts on that, so I just figured this is a better outlet than none. But if you made it this far, drop a like, drop a dislike, whichever one you prefer. What's your thoughts on the podcast if you watched it all the way through, or if you just watched those tidbits that I shared? And if you disagree or agree with any of the opinions that I had in this video, just let me know below. Again, everyone has difference of opinions. The main thing I always go with is like, try to be respectful, expressing those opinions, and that's pretty much about it. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut the video here before I find a way to rant on for another 20 minutes or something like that.